Doce Tangi Compagno And let's just do the 4 limitless contemplations. You're having trouble because it's load shedding again. No, thanks. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Semjen damje dewatang dewe jutang den pa jutik, dungal tang dungal chichu tang trawa jutik, dungal mepe dewa tampatang minra wajutik, nearing chaktang nitang trawe tang nom chempola ne pa jutik. So good evening to everybody on this cold evening in Johannesburg, crazy in the middle of summer, and this Cold War that's going on, and the protests and the everything. Let's put our light tonight. And tonight, we're going to do, people are getting bumped off, the 3 doors of liberation lead us to practically explore our primordial wisdom. Very important subject matter. And I won't take you long. I'm going to try and end by 8:20 to 9, so that it's not too long for all of you. But I don't mind as we go along with all the subjects, because this is actually part 5 of the whole series of talks, starting with looking at our lives as an experience, not a tiny temporary identity called I, me, and mine. And if you missed any of them, go back and read them, because it's quite important to actually understand that you get a full view, because what I'm trying to do is like give you a really full view of yourself and how you can put your practical wisdom into being. So I'm starting with a story. I'm sorry if you've heard this story before, but it's very appropriate here for me, so I'm putting it in. Diana Simmons, I'm pleased you made it tonight. So this is my story. An American tourist found himself in India on the day of the pilgrimage to a top of a sacred mountain. Thousands of people would climb the steep path to the mountaintop. The tourist, who'd been jogging and doing vigorous exercise and thought he was in good shape, decided to join in and share the experience. After 20 minutes, he was out of breath and could hardly climb, not another step, while he couldn't climb another step, while women carrying babies and frail old men with canes moved easily past him. I don't understand it, he said to an Indian companion. How can these people do it when I can't? His friend answered, listen to this carefully, it is because you have the typical Western habit of seeing everything as a test. You see the mountain as your enemy, and you set out to defeat it. So naturally, the mountain fights back, and it's stronger than you are. We do not see the mountain as our enemy to be conquered. The purpose of our climb is to become one with the mountain, and so it lifts us up and carries us along. Now, that story is a very important story, because when we're facing negative circumstances or difficult things in our life, which I think everybody's facing now, we're facing worries, we're facing trials, we're facing tribulations. So we take the I, the ego, and we try and work out systems that we can find a way to actually change things, or to move things in a different way, or to manipulate things, or to attest. We've got to stop. And the whole purpose of all of this, of seeing life as an experience, is to be able to let that absolute true nature start taking over and try to surrender and give up these personal identities to a large extent and move into our real natures, which are so different to the personal identities. Some of us don't even know our true natures. I really often think when I'm contemplating how different my true nature perceives things to me. And you need to start becoming aware of this so that in the end you can surrender like they did in the mountain to that part of you that can see the whole overall picture, not the tragedy, not the thing that's actually happening, okay? Because if you look at the state of the world and the way it's viewed by the majority of its inhabitants, you have to be deluded if you think that we're in harmony with ourselves and with others and with the world around us. Even when things seem to be going well, it never lasts. It's gone in 1 minute and then you're back to facing yourself. Yet in golden ages, we really were like this, where we could climb a mountain because the mountain wasn't our enemy, where we surrendered to it. Now we have a collective habit momentum, which if you go back to the skandhas, I'll just go briefly through them in a few minutes, and then we're going on to the doors of liberation. But we have a collective habit momentum of destroying our own lives and the lives around us, mainly for power and ego's success. If you just look at the reason of wars and hatred and court cases and all the rubbish in businesses and things like that, it's because people want to win and they want to defend that ego, and that's what it's about. And then when we come to the door of death, we realize it all dissolves, and what was it all for? And what were those trials and tribulations for if I didn't manage to get out of my personal identity and go and see it another way? Now, we see a few enlightened beings in this world have a differing view to teach us. From the Tibetan masters, I've learned such a lot, because none of them are resentful, none of them are angry, none of them are feel bad that they've been holocausted out of their country, their culture, their everything. None of them are angry. And I'm always thinking about it. How come? How did they get to be that? Don't we want to learn what they learned? And aren't you tired of suffering and watching people suffering? Because I felt so fatigued today, and I know it wasn't only a physical fatigue. If I switch on the news, it fatigues me terribly, terribly badly. I'm not going to switch it on anymore, but you've got to see what's going on. But I felt this inner fatigue today, like a fatigue that I'm so tired of seeing the world in this way. And I'm so tired of watching people suffering and suffering and suffering. And as soon as we realize the importance of the practical teachings of the Buddha on the illusory nature of the 5 skandhas, which is what makes up our self, and we examine the 3 doors of liberation, then we come to understand something very important, that there are 6 realms of samsara, starting with the hell realms, hungry ghost, where you grasp onto everything, animal realm, where you haven't got too many choices, the human realm, which is full of desire and falling apart at the seams, the jealous God realm, where you can't see that people are in positions because they've earned the right to be there, and there's, you can't see the wisdom of equality, and the God realm, where pride and attachment is what causes the God realm. Now we need to dissolve those mind states. We need to realize that those mind states only arise because of our attachment to our negative emotions. We're so attached to those negative emotions, we don't even realize. We're so attached to everything I, me, and myself want. And that's the problem. So this beautiful story, it's called the story of the loincloth. And once upon a time, there was a guru who was so impressed by the spiritual progress of his disciple that he decided, you don't need any further guidance, and consequently left him on his own in a little hut on the banks of a river. Each morning after his ablutions, the disciple would hang out his little loincloth to dry. That was all he owned. And one day, he was distraught to find that it had been torn to shred by rats. He went around the village and begged for another, and when the rats nibbled holes in this one too, he decided to get himself a kitten to deal with the rats. He had no more trouble with the rats, but now, in addition to begging for his own food, he had to beg for milk as well. He realized this was too much hard work and too much of a burden on the villagers, so he decided he would keep a cow. When he got the cow, he had to beg for fodder, and then thought it was easier to till the land to get fodder around his little hut. But that proved to be too troublesome, and it left him for little time in meditation. So he employed laborers to till the land. Overseeing the laborers became a chore, so he married a woman who would share this task with him. You just got to hear this story because it's really our story, you know. Not before long, he was one of the wealthiest men in the village. Years later, his guru happened to arrive in the village and was surprised to see a palatial home in the same place the hut had once stood. He asked one of the servants whether a disciple of his had once lived there. Before he received a reply, the disciple himself appeared. The guru asked him what he'd been doing since he last saw him, his wonderful disciple. He answered, "Sir, you're not going to believe this, but there was no other way I could keep my loincloth." Okay. Now, when you see this story, it is exaggerated a bit, but you know, you get the message. Because of our attachment, because of our attachments, because we need to feed the ego all the time. So that's why the world's in such a mess. And basically, there's only one way out, and that is to clean the mirror of the mind so that it reflects different things. And you might think, what's the point of me clearing it? But let's say 20 of us clear the mirror of our minds and have beautiful light. That is already a whole big thing of light that can change and transmute the darkness. Because right now, in this physical body, we can begin the exploration of that primordial consciousness. The primordial consciousness consists of the three bodies, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, okay? And those are very, very important, and the five wisdoms. And if we practically, in our daily lives, start to apply them, which is what I'm absolutely keen to really for everybody to do. I've got to say to you that I started this in my life on a very small basis. I started doing the mantras of the five wisdom Buddhas. That's how I started. Then I added to the mantras, and I said, may that particular wisdom clear that particular negative emotion. And then I started to expand it and expand it. And then I was always playing with my fingers with situations of how you could understand that primordial consciousness. And once you have it at your fingertips, which we're going to do, if we don't get there to the end of the doors of liberation, then we'll carry on with it next time. But I want it so much at your fingertips that when you're in a situation, you could just perceive it quickly in terms of the five wisdoms and change your whole perception to a situation. and not become involved in the loincloth. I don't know how we got to wear so many clothes. We should have just had a loincloth. And while I've been trying to pack my house so that we could sell it, I've been thinking to myself, and Patru Rinpoche, all he owned was one stick with a little burden in it and maybe a little plate to eat from and one or two other things, maybe one change of clothing. How did we get this? How did we get all this stuff? You know, I got Eckhart to come here on Saturday and I just gave him stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff for the center. I hope some of you can get some of that stuff. But the thing is, we've really got to understand how this works. Because when you look at the skandhas and you look at yourself, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. You put the pieces together and then suddenly you've got a self, you've got a me. And then that's your supposed self that you're looking at. But it's nothing permanent. It's everything we know and everything we relate to. And then one day the pieces fall apart. Something comes, somebody throws a bomb on us, and all the pieces of the jigsaw are all over. And what's left? If we don't know what is left after that, then we can't understand that. And each piece of the jigsaw puzzle, each piece of the self, each piece of our body, the blood, the veins, the everything, each piece of our whole constructed self is actually, each piece of the jigsaw is an enlightened part of our light bodies. So when it's transmuted from the physical body and the physical consciousness and the ordinary consciousness becomes enlightened, you don't get rid of it. It just becomes enlightened, an enlightened being. Now we have to learn how to take the physical aspect or one piece of the jigsaw puzzle and see what it really is. And then we've got the enlightened part of us. Anyone want to say anything? Because it's really very important. This is how we begin to change, because everybody that comes into my care in this life, I want them to have at least some form of enlightenment when they get to death's door. I feel very strongly about that. Whether I'm there or here, I'll be there for you. But the point of the matter is, if we don't start practically bringing this into our lives, it's never going to work. You can't just suddenly know it when you die. Anyone want to ask or say anything?
Yeah. Mel, so
Please.
I have a question about that, because as you're talking about let's say our negativities, right? That they are really, when we have real insight, they are wisdoms. And really it's trying to transform them so that we, can get, to the goal that already is there. But I wonder about, I guess I'm just going to say levels, in the sense of, like, sometimes you're maybe like a beginner, or maybe you've practiced longer and so you had a different understanding. How does one, I guess, deal with, because this has been sort of like a question I keep contemplating, how to deal with, let's say, like anger. Okay, so there's been a couple of situations where, like, somebody does something and it's frustrating, and I don't think they're doing it out of like hatred towards me, but it's almost like they repeat the same like thing, and so it becomes a frustration to me. So it's this thing of like how to transform maybe that anger or the frustration I feel towards, rather than to just have aversion. Because on the one hand, I know that they are at a different place in their life or on path, and so it's not for me to jump in and tell them what to do and how to do it. But at the same time, I sometimes wonder, like, if, not to say like a complete walking away, but if I like turned away or didn't engage them or just like gave some space, if that's the help that they would need. for example?
Now, I see exactly what you're getting at, and it's a very important thing because, you know, once you can identify the primordial wisdom, it's extremely important for you to be able to relate to other people on a level that they can understand.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a kind of a like it's no good analyzing, well, this is mirror-like wisdom, this person irritating me is mirror-like wisdom, you know, so I better see it in the mirror because it's my own karmic imprint. But the actual dealing with that person, you've got to use your primordial wisdom to do it, but you've got to be able to do it at their level. So like I always give that example because I'm thinking of a woman who once I was at a function and she was piling her plate with I mean, it's a silly example, but she was piling her plate with desserts, you know. And then I was watching her. I actually wasn't watching her out of disgust that she was, I was actually fascinated because she said, I heard her saying, I must try this, I must try this, I must try this. So I was just looking at her. And then she turns around and she says to me, oh, well, you only live once. Now, there I am, you know, am I going to give her a dissertation on the puddings right there? I just said, do you? Okay, do you? So she said, wow, do you think you don't? I said, you should think about that. Again, that was the conversation. So the thing is that you can be witty and clever. You know, sometimes I just make a little witty remark to somebody, you know, which actually gets them shaken up and gets them to stop, you know, or just a little remark that suddenly wakes them up, but a compassionate one. You know, like if they keep irritating you, you can't do nothing about it except use it as mirror-like wisdom. You actually have to say something to stop them from creating karma. So you might even say something like, I wonder why you enjoy doing this. Or whatever. I'll think of a nice example. But you do have to say something at the level that people can understand to try and stop them from also doing it. But we never do that. We see it as an attack on ourselves, and then we're in a court of law in 5 minutes, you know, fighting them and making a lawsuit against them. And then it never got learned in that life. So it's really important because when you look at the 5 skandhas, which we discussed last week, and if anybody missed it, please go back to that session, because the 5 skandhas form, which is not only your form, but the form of everything around you, feelings, which are all your feelings, which happen 1,000 times a day. Your feelings become your perceptions, the way you see the world, which we talked about, how you could change your perception. Your perceptions become your habit momentum, which is then something you keep on doing, like this person irritating you all the time. It's their habit momentum, and the habit momentum becomes your ordinary consciousness, which we talked about last week. You can go over it if you didn't hear it. The 5 sense consciousnesses, the mind consciousness that labels what the sense consciousnesses see, hear, feel, and then the klesha consciousness, which is the negative emotions, all the emotions that you put on the perceptions you see. That's called your klesha consciousness. And then you like this, you don't like this, you want this, you don't want that. Those come into your consciousness, which then becomes your alaya consciousness, where all your imprints are that follows you from life to life. So if you're born in a fat body, it means that you really were not able to get over that habit momentum, and now you're born into that. Or if you were born being angry and irritable, means you couldn't fix that alaya consciousness momentum, and it's catapulted into an angry family where it all comes to light again. We have to stop. We have to get off that wheel of life once and for all. Those skandhas were what the Buddha taught to help us to change and see there was no solid self. And once we could see that, once we could see all of that, okay, through the skandhas, once we could see that, then we can go on to the 3 doors of liberation. So let's talk about them tonight. What are the 3 doors of liberation? Number 1, emptiness. Okay, and you'll note all the doors of liberation have got ness on the end. Ness. Okay, emptiness. Desirelessness. Signlessness. They've all got ness on the end. Now, there's a very good reason why they've got ness on the end, because without that ness on the end, they become very, very, very different. So let's start with the famous thing, the famous door of liberation, emptiness. If your fridge is empty, you run and fill it. You hate things being empty. Not so? But emptiness is something different. And this is what Yong'e Mingyur Rinpoche describes. He says, in Tibetan, empty is tongpa. Ness is ni. It's something you add. Tongpa ni. Empty means there's nothing there. Emptiness means there's nothing solid and separate there. It's full of possibility. So what he says, Mingyur Rinpoche, is the sense of openness that people experience when they simply rest their minds is known in Buddhist terms as emptiness. He says it's the most misunderstood word in the whole of Buddhist philosophy. Westerners misinterpret emptiness as nothingness, and nothing could be further from the truth the Buddha sought to describe. So tell me what emptiness is. You tell me. In your opinion, you've all been studying Buddhism for long enough. What does emptiness mean? Give me a definition. Because you all hate empty. Nobody likes things to be empty. If the bottle's empty, then I've got nothing to drink. If it's emptiness, then what is it? What? Give me a definition. You've all been studying Buddhism for years. Give me a definition. Somebody. Yeah, Mart, go for it.
I would think it's the base, the ground, the God force, the from which anything and anything and everything arises.
Yes, good.
And which in itself is also the energy or to which everything returns.
Okay, I love that definition. So what you're saying is everything comes out of it. Therefore, it's full of possibility. Tongpa means empty, but only in the sense of something beyond our ability to perceive with our senses and our capacity to conceptualize. He says it would maybe a better word to use for emptiness in Buddhism might be inconceivable, unnameable, but certainly full of possibility. Because of emptiness in Buddhism, because of emptiness, everything is possible. Come on, Diana. I know
No,
you've got.
I've just a couple of thoughts on emptiness. Could you see them little bubbles coming out? And
Yeah.
for me, it very much depends on your perspective or your perception at the time. If
Yeah.
I see, for example, a beautiful crystal vase that's just sitting there and gleaming, I never think of it as empty. I just look at it as something that has an inherent beauty.
Okay.
The other example that came to mind was a ball. It's a sphere. What does it contain? It's not empty. You can throw it, you can bounce it, you can catch it, you can sit on it, you can puncture it. So there are all those potentials in what you think is a nothingness. They're sort of very, very pedestrian examples, but they just
No,
help
but
me
it's not
understand.
nothingness. It's not nothingness.
No, it's not nothingness.
No, but it's only that it doesn't exist as a thing on its own.
Exactly.
This dish does not have a separate, independent existence. This dish is made up of the copper, the person that made it, the person that shaped it, all the things that came together, the oven that got baked in, etc., etc. That's what this dish is. So it's full of possibility. Sorry,
it's like the ball or like the vase. It's holding the potential of the beautiful sound.
Exactly.
So it has the potential in its emptiness.
Yes, I like that. And James Lowe says emptiness is not a theory for thinning out the world. Rather, emptiness is the undefinedness, which is the basis of my potential as well. If I am full of emptiness, then I have the potential to become so many different things. And I can transform. Yeah, go on. Go on.
Emptiness is not the opposite of full.
No, because emptiness has fullness,
Exactly.
but it's not fullness of a tangible object. It's full of possibility. So the ball might be there, and there's definitely something there. But the ball can be used to throw. It can be used to give to a dog. It can be used as an ornament. It's got masses and masses of things. And it is not a separate object. This is like this door to liberation. As soon as you understand this, even with a person, as soon as you see a person and you see them as emptiness, not as the person you perceive, means full of possibility, empty of a separate existing self. And as James Lowe says, there's an appearance, but he says when he looks out of the window, there's a tree. And he says, trust me, if you go out and you say, this tree is empty, and you hit your hand on it, you're going to get a big bruise from the tree, because there's definitely something there. But the tree doesn't exist as a separate entity. The tree came because you put a seed in the ground, because you watered it, because the sun came, the rain came, the soil was there. It's an interdependent thing. Therefore, it has emptiness. It's full of appearance and empty. It's moving all the time. Now think about a person. I mean, how boring are we? If I get up in the morning and I'm still the same old Melanie that I was when I was a teenager, and then when I was a mother, and then when I was a counselor, and then when I was this, if I'm the same old person, how boring would I be? But you are changing because you are made of emptiness. It's full of possibilities, but it means nothing is stuck. Nothing is stuck at all. So when the Buddha taught the Prajna Paramita, he actually taught form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And so are feelings, perceptions, habit formations, consciousness, they're all empty of a solid, independent substance. Now, how does this help us to understand this? How does it help us? If something is moving different shape, this happened because of this and this and this, why grasp onto things? Why grasp? If you say, like he gives this lovely example, he says, you say, oh, I love that place by the seaside, a particular place you used to visit, okay? And then the person's sitting next to you, and then you say, you must go there. It's so amazing, you know? We used to go for walks along the road there. We used to go for coffee. You used to sit in the ocean and splash around and everything. He says, when you tell the person about that place, you're only telling them your ideas about that place. You're not telling them everything about the truth of the place. You're telling them your perception of the place. Now, when you look at the word emptiness, okay, it's much more receptive to the truth. Even if people we care about or we dislike, like people will come to you and they'd say, that bloody boss of mine, he's always on my neck, he's always too terrible. Then they come to you one day and they say, you know, I had an amazing experience. I was alone with the boss and he said to me, come, let's go for lunch. And suddenly I saw what a nice person he is. You know, he's such a terrific person. We had such a lovely lunch. And all along, I had seen him in that role. That's what emptiness does. It changes, it's a door to liberation. Because once something has emptiness, it is not a solid object. Oh, shame, Esty. Okay. It's not a solid object. It's full of the potential and possibility of everything. The more sense we have of emptiness, the more we allow the space in which we can see something new and fresh and arising of ourselves. And then we can move into interaction of the world. We have no preconceived ideas about anything. Mimi, what do you think of that?
You know, it really does, because then, as you say, with the person, if you've got your idea, your firm perception, you're cutting out all the other possibilities of that particular person. And that's what I think you're meaning by the full potential of everything.
Yes.
In terms of the emptiness, it's empty of a solid, separate existence.
Exactly. And once we can understand that about ourselves, then we can understand it about the whole world and about other people. And when we practice Vajrayana, it's so interesting because he says, you visualize yourself as a deity. You say, hello, I'm Tara today. I'm Guru Rinpoche today. I'm Chenrezig today. He says, first, it's me, James, pretending I'm Tara. But maybe after some time, I'm Tara pretending I'm James. You know, I mean, how do we know? How do we know who's the right thing? He says a multiple possibility of identity, no fixed person. We can be whoever we like, but when we are the deity, we are those fresh awakened things. But as Martin's definition, he says, where does Tara come from? The Dharma Dhatu, the emptiness, the essence. Where does Padmasambhava come from? The essence. Where do sentient beings come from? The essence. We have the scope. So when you are sitting in your life thinking, woe is me, look at my life, I hate what I'm doing, everything's happening to me, I'm in a war, I'm in a fix, I'm in a this, we've stopped the potential of the door of liberation. Lindsay, I want to hear your voice, and Marion, other Marion Cassidy, I want to hear your voices. I like to hear, and Damika, all of you, tell me what you feel, because if you can get emptiness, That's the first door to liberation. It's extremely important.
Mel?
Yes, please, Marion, I like it.
I like to also use another word. Emptiness is empty of inherent existence.
Yeah,
That's
precisely.
also nice.
Yeah, no, we say empty of a separate self.
Separate
empty
self, or yeah, of inherent existence. That thing is not solidly existing. So everything is
Let
dependent.
me ask you something. You're absolutely right, but how do you then apply it? My whole thing now is apply everything practically. How do you apply it? How do you apply when you see that in the world? How do you apply it? That's what I'm interested in. Okay, think about it. It's important. But when you look at that, it's the most amazing, amazing thing. If you've got that first door to liberation, which is emptiness, you've got the most amazing potential to change everything in your life. Because if you hate your life and you're sick and tired of yourself and you're sick and tired of what's happening and you're sick and tired of everything, just change. I mean, open yourself up to all the possibilities. And when you do the practices, it's amazing because you can be any of these beings. Now let's do the other two quickly. Even if we don't get to the primordial consciousness, let's just do the other two and then we'll meditate on them. Okay, so the second one is called signlessness. The second door to liberation is called signlessness. And James Lowe likes to call it also aimlessness. Now, some of you are going to go, oh my God, aimlessness. I don't want to be an aimless person. But remember, it's not an aimless person and it's not a desireless person. A desireless person would be someone who'd go, oh, they wouldn't have energy. But desirelessness and signlessness is a completely different thing because as soon as you've got the ness, it's a completely different story. So signlessness, let's start with that. When we label things or use signs and language to describe them, we go, I'm a man, I'm a woman. Well, today you've got a lot of other descriptions as well. Not only I'm a man, I'm a woman. I'm halfway, I'm in between, I'm both, I'm this, I'm that, and the other, okay? But you use a sign to describe yourself. He says, this is my work. I like oranges. I like their color. I like their taste. He says, when we hear language, language brings a pattern, a sign into our minds. So he says, people write in the newspaper, the death rate from COVID was so many people in such and such, this, and these are the circumstances. He says, but you can't say 3,000 people died of COVID. He said, each person died in their own way, in a different circumstance, in a different way. So you can't take a sign and put it on. You can't take a sign and take it as everything. You can't do that because each person died in a different way. So you can't say, these are all the people that died of COVID. I mean, one died on the field, one died in a hospital, one died here, one died with no family, one died with lots of family. You can't categorize them into a sign, okay? So he says, a sign, out of a sign, we have a basis out of which we generate a something that is truly existing, but it isn't really truly existent. It says, when we talk about, you know what I did last year? I went here and I went there and I did this and I did this. He says we're bringing together the illusion that there's a past we could talk about. There was something that happened there. It was solid. It was everything. It was all there. It was a sign, he says, or this is what I'm going to do in the future. He says, those are just imagined ideas in our mind. So Thich Nhat Hanh says a sign means an appearance or an image of our perception. And he says, yes, signs are good instrument for our use, but they're not the absolute truth, and they can mislead us. So if you want to be liberated, you have to have signlessness. That means you can have a sign, but don't take it as an absolute. So for example, in the Diamond Sutra, it says, wherever there's a sign, there's deception, illusion, and appearances can deceive. We practice signlessness in liberation by not being caught in a sign. So say, for instance, you're in New York and somebody says, okay, we're going on a tour of the Statue of Liberty. Okay, what comes to your mind? You're going on a tour of the Statue of Liberty. So there's the statue. What does it mean? I don't know if it's true anymore that the whole of America is free. I don't think it is. But the Statue of Liberty is a free sign. And then you might go on a tour in New York of the Statue of Liberty and think you're freeing yourself. Would you be freeing yourself? No, you wouldn't. It's a sign, but it's not an absolute sign that you've got to follow. So if we look at, let's say, a flower is made up, as Thich Nhat Hanh says, of non-flower elements. So flower is made up of soil, water, sun. And if we practice signlessness, then everything can be seen in a true state. And there's a sense of freedom. So maybe when people are taking you on a tour, they should say, now today we're going to such and such a place. And they give you the sign. And then they should say, close your eyes on the bus and tell me what you think about this place you're going to see. Because the sign is not absolute. Now think about how many things. So now in lots of places, they're having fights over the signs in bathrooms. Should transgender people be able to go into the same bathroom? Should they have separate bathrooms? What's the sign they should have? I mean, think about it. To read the signs of the world is as a flow of shape and codependence, interdependence. Not to see the sign as if I'm talking about something that actually exists out there. That's what signlessness is about. Sign only arrives as a kind of a massage that allows you to move in different patterns in this moment, not something solid out there. And in the heart of the Mahayana teachings, it's the absence of thingness in here and out there. And that's what signlessness is. Emptiness?
Mel?
Yes, please.
Can one say that, I mean, if with the actual act of putting a sign or assigning or whatever word we want to use, actually, isn't it that we denying the emptiness?
Yes,
Isn't it so? Because in the emptiness we say, well, there's endless potential, and whatever we call it, a ball or an orange or whatever, and in that is an endless potential, and not only the things we know about what a ball can do or not. There's much more about in it. And now when we go to signlessness or to a signage and say, well, there again, and say that is a ball, then we can somehow decline or deny the emptiness of that.
Exactly. And we deny
Okay,
the possibility. If somebody's giving you a guided tour, okay, and there happens to be a primitive person there, and they say, this is a beautiful table, but that guy who's looking at the table thinks, wow, that's a fabulous boat. Because if you turned it upside down and you floated it in the water, it would be absolutely terrific. Okay, he doesn't know anything about table. Now, you couldn't live your life without signs. but don't see them as existing solidly in themselves. See them as full of possibilities.
Mel, I think also part of labeling and of assigning is limiting. It limits.
Exactly, precisely. You can go on discussing this for hours, and I promised you I'm not going to make you late tonight. So we'll just do the last one, which is desirelessness. But the thing is, what you're saying is precisely on the nose. Don't limit yourself by the signs. So if someone says to you, I want a cup, give them a cup. You've got to know the language, you've got to know the sign, but know that this cup has got lots of potential. I might do a mixture in it, I might do a liquid in it, I might do a tea in it, I might do a coffee in it. Don't assign to something and leave it out there as a solid thing. This is what we're doing in the Buddha's teaching. The 5 skandhas, break them down. The 3 doors to liberation. Don't see anything as solid, not even yourself, which is so important, because then it means you can be a different thing every day. Yay! Today, the children were dressing up for Halloween. So my 2 little grandchildren, both of them, didn't want to put on their costumes for Halloween. The one said, I don't want to be a lion. And the other said, I don't want to be a frog. Okay. The mommy said, you're going to be a lion and a frog because today's Halloween and you've got to dress up for school. Okay. But they didn't want to be. We keep on fixing things. We can be a frog, we can be a sign, we could be a human, we could be a different human, we could be Tara, we could be green Tara, we could be white Tara, we could be Padmasambhava, we can be everything. But don't get caught by the sign. Don't get caught in the solidity of the sign. See that signlessness means full of potential. If I'm in a job and I hate my job, why do I stay? Because I'm scared, I won't have this, I won't be able to do this. That's what signlessness is about. And desirelessness is not desireless. Desireless means somebody who would go, Melanie, do you want a cappuccino? No. Do you want tea? No. Do you want water? No. Desireless would be someone, or aimless would be someone who's just wandering around like a bit of a zombie. No. Desirelessness means not to have an aim that is fixed. So when you are going, oh, shame, okay, don't worry. She's having load shedding, so it's very difficult. Desirelessness means, okay, that it doesn't mean a despairing, helpless, collapsing, depressed hopelessness. It means don't project away from this moment. So when you've got something going, get to be desirelessness means, yes, I'd like this to come about, but if it doesn't, it's okay. I'm not living on the desire or the hope that this is going to happen. I'm putting my energy into what's going to happen. And if it doesn't, it's okay. That's what desirelessness is. Okay. It's nothing to do. There's nothing to do, nothing to realize, no program, no agenda. Now, we do have to have a little bit of an agenda in our lives. There's no doubt about it. But we're always going to some place, wandering in samsara, moving from birth to death. And when we sit in meditation, 500 thoughts arise and pass, and we can leap into them, or we can just let them be. We can just be present with them. Now, when you've got a project, Why can't you be present with the project without saying, I've got to get this. I've got to get this. This is the way it's got to map out. This is what I'm seeing. Those are ego's goals, ego's plans, ego's wants. We can enjoy the good things. We can enjoy a project without attachment. And then if it doesn't work out, it's not a catastrophe. It's okay. Desirelessness means full of every possibility. It's okay. However it works out, it's the right moment, it's the right place, it's the right attitude. And that's what we've got to apply to meditation, to everything. Emptiness, signlessness, and desirelessness, or aimlessness, if you want to call it, doesn't mean nothing. It means you're not tied to it. Thich Nhat Hanh says that desirelessness is stopping and realizing the happiness that is already available in this moment, and that's your freedom. Isn't it wonderful? Now write those 3 words down. We're just going to do a quick meditation and then I'm going to end. But write those 3 words and call them the heading, the 3 doors to liberation. And why do we want to be liberated? Because we're tired of the suffering world. We're tired of our labeling. We're tired of always having a particular goal and then it doesn't work out and then we're disappointed. We're sick and tired of it all. And it's really important that you understand these 3 doors full of potential, which will make your life exciting, open, full of possibility, and yet not full of ego's agenda. So let's do a quick meditation and then I'll let you go to bed. So breathe in and breathe out. And as you breathe in, I want you to breathe in the word liberation, freedom. And see how you define freedom from when you were a child. When you were a child, you were really angry if your parents made you do something and you didn't want to, and you thought, when I grow up, I want to be free. And then when you were a teenager, you thought, I want to move out of here. I don't want to ever be dictated to by any of my parents. And you thought that was freedom. But of course, to move out, you have to pay for it. You've got lots of responsibilities. It's not what it seems to be. And so when we look at the 3 doors of emptiness, signlessness, desirelessness, it doesn't mean things are empty. It doesn't mean things are absolutely without an aim. Doesn't mean there are no signs in the world and nothing with a label on. It just means don't get attached to all these things that you think that are out there, because actually they're just interdependent facets of all kinds of things. And when suddenly you take a deep breath in and you feel a door to liberation, has got to be when you stop hankering after things, when you stop holding on to things. Let everything just be as it needs to be. Be fresh and alive. Then the wisdom can come in. Just see how bound you are to so many things, to all the dictates of your mind. And in this very moment, be present right now. In the Heart Sutra, the Buddha, which was actually Chenrezig who taught on behalf of the Buddha, said the 5 aggregates should be correctly viewed as empty by nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also none other than empty. In the same way, feelings, perceptions, habit formations, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, therefore, all dharmas are emptiness, no characteristics, unborn, unceasing, no stains, no freedom from stains, no decrease, no increase. And then he goes on, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no taste, no sensation, and on and on and on. No aging and death, no exhaustion of aging and death. And why did the Buddha teach all those teachings of the Heart Sutra? So that we could let go of our grasping. And in this moment, just allow all your grasping. Open your fingers and let everything out. Open your minds and let everything be free and dissolve. That's the doors to liberation. I want you to ponder these 3. We can debate them. They really are very interesting because there's no set form for them. You can just understand them. But take the word ness, see it as full of possibility, and take these 3 words and in your practice, just contemplate them and see how they are and see whether those doors to liberation can't open up. And then when we come next time, we'll start with all the wisdoms and how to practically touch them and get in touch with them. And then we'll also look at freshness, because freshness is another subject, which is really that we're so stale in everything. We really need to, once we're in our Buddha nature, we're fresh as anything for everything. Isn't that a wonderful idea? Isn't it a wonderful idea when you look at somebody and you see them with fresh eyes? You know how you saw them before. You're so sick and tired of seeing them like that. Suddenly you look at them and you think, wow, this is a new look. They're the same, but you see them differently. Such an exciting way to live. Let's dedicate poor Fiona. Her battery didn't work because we've had load shedding again all these hours of the day. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's just dedicate to all the people in the world, all those that are really, really, really suffering and really having a real hard time in the world, and those that are bereft and those that are the hostages that are being kept, and for both nations and for all the Palestinians and all the Israelis going through terrible times, and for the deluded minds of all the terrorists in this whole world. We dedicate all these teachings. May they be free from signs, from desires, and from and may they understand emptiness. And through the virtue of this goodness, may we obtain omniscience and overcome all adversity, thereupon liberating beings from the ocean of existence, which is rocked by the waves of birth, aging, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane, topne nepe tranam pamshene, jegana chibana tropaye, sipe sole doa do warsho.